20. The stupidest cars of the 1950s you never seen before. Let's rewind to the flashy, futuristic 1950 when cars weren't just machines. They were rolling dreams. Post-war America was bursting with optimism, and automakers went wild with ideas. Some were brilliant, others not so much. From bizarre designs to features that make you scratch your head, we're counting down 20 of the strangest car concepts the 50 ever dared to put on wheels. Are you ready to visit these mobile disasters? If so, buckle up. 1958, Chevrolet Yeoman. If the 1950s were the era of American automotive excess with tailfins, flashy chrome, and space-age styling, the 1958 Chevrolet Yeoman looked like someone showed up to a fancy party dressed way too casually. The Yeoman was born with good intentions, to offer an affordable station wagon for young families. But, in an effort to cut costs, Chevrolet stripped away almost everything people loved about their cars. No tailfins, no sparkling chrome, no two-tone paint. The Yeoman looked like a drab gray Lego brick boxy, plain, monotonous. The inside was even more basic. No air conditioning, no radio, no faux wood trim. Everything was sacrificed for the sake of price. The problem was, even with all the cutting, the Yeoman still wasn't cheap enough to compete with better-equipped wagons from other brands. Its biggest weakness was its lack of identity. In an era where cars made bold statements, the Yeoman said nothing. It wasn't fast, it wasn't stylish, and it wasn't particularly affordable. It just existed, and then quickly faded from the Chevrolet lineup. It's proof that when you strip away too much, you can strip away a car's very soul. 1959, Chevrolet El Camino. The idea of combining the utility of a pickup truck with the comfort of a coupe sounded great in theory, at least. That's exactly what the 1959 Chevrolet El Camino aimed to be. A stylish two-in-one vehicle ready for cruising and hauling. But, in reality, the El Camino lost its way. Built on the Chevrolet Impala platform, the El Camino inherited the flamboyant 1950s styling with massive tailfins, a low stance, and sweeping lines. But that made it look more like a show car than a workhorse. It lacked serious hauling capacity, had a small bed, and was too low to the ground for real truck work. Conversely, as a passenger car, it didn't offer the interior comfort or refinement of a traditional sedan. The cabin felt cramped due to the pickup design, impacting the driver's experience. Not quite a car, not quite a truck. The concept was bold, but the '59 El Camino proved one thing. When you try to be two things at once, you might not be good at either. 1950, Nash Air Flight. Next up is the 1950 Nash Air Flight, a truly unique and different car from Nash Motors. It came with a 6-cylinder engine around 3.8 liters in size, making about 112 horsepower. It was said to be easy to drive and reliable. Inside, the Air Flight had a large and quite comfortable space. One unique feature was that the front seats could turn into a full-size bed for resting or sleeping. On the outside, this car stood out with its unique round shape and sloping curves, which were supposed to make it more fuel efficient. However, the Nash Air Flight is often considered one of the worst cars of its time. Its unique design was polarizing and not loved by everyone. Additionally, because of its heavy body and aerodynamic shape, it didn't handle or perform as well as other cars of the era. Some owners even had problems with the transmission and other mechanical parts. As a result, sales were poor, and it wasn't popular. Because of these issues, many people consider it one of the worst cars ever made. 1953, Willys Arrow. Our journey continues with the 1953 Willys Arrow. This was a small car made by Willys Overland in the US. It had an inline 6-cylinder engine, making around 91 horsepower. What made this car special compared to others of its time was its unique shape. Soft curves instead of sharp angles, a sloped roofline, and circles instead of squares. Inside, there was enough room for 5 people, and the interior was simple compared to larger American cars. However, the Willys Arrow is often considered one of the worst cars of its time because it wasn't powerful enough. Its engine, with only 91 horsepower, made it weaker than the larger, more powerful cars popular in the 1950s. Also, the Arrow's design was seen as outdated and less appealing compared to newer compact models. These challenges made sales difficult for the Willys Arrow, and production eventually stopped just a few years later in 1955. This led many to view this car as an unsuccessful business venture, one of the least successful American cars of that decade. 1954 Hudson Jet. Did you know that in 1954, the Hudson Motor Car Company made a car called the Hudson Jet? This small car was created to compete with another popular compact model at the time, the Nash Rambler. It had a 6-cylinder engine, producing about 104 horsepower. Inside, the interior was simple but useful, with room for 6 people. On the outside, its plain, boxy shape and lack of fancy details earned it the nickname Drab Beige Box. So why did the Hudson Jet make it onto our list of the worst cars? Well, this car had some problems that affected its reputation. It faced tough competition in the compact car segment and had high production costs. Additionally, its design wasn't very appealing, and its performance didn't meet people's expectations. The Hudson Company later merged with Nash Kelvinator to become American Motors Corporation, leading to a short production run for the Jet before it was discontinued completely. The Hudson Jet is a prime example of a strategic failure, focusing too much on business goals while forgetting the user experience. Customers don't buy good intentions. They buy what works and inspires. Have you ever seen any of these in real life? Your memories are really important here. 1950 Nash Rambler. The 1950 Nash Rambler was a small car made by Nash Motors. Its 6-cylinder engine only produced up to 82 horsepower, not very powerful. The Nash Rambler's interior had a modern, smooth design with room for 4 people and a unique wraparound windshield. On the outside, this car had a unique bathtub shape with sloping curves. Although the Nash Rambler might have been revolutionary for its compact, fuel-efficient structure, it wasn't actually popular. Many felt the engine was weak, struggling to go uphill or carry heavy loads. Due to its low shape and light structure, the car swayed a lot when cornering or going fast, which was quite scary. Furthermore, the Nash Rambler had many mechanical and reliability issues, such as transmission problems, suspension issues, and electrical issues. All these problems made the car less reliable compared to its competitors. The interior cabin was quite small, limiting its cargo capacity, making it impractical for most buyers compared to larger American sedan models. All these factors contributed to the 1950 Nash Rambler's reputation as one of the worst cars ever made. 1955 Packard Clipper. Back in the day, Packard was the symbol of accessible American luxury. Their slogan, "Ask the man who owns one," wasn't just marketing, it was pride. Owning a Packard meant you were part of the elite, but by the mid-1950s, fierce competition, price pressures, and a changing market put Packard in a difficult position. To regain market share, they introduced the Clipper, designed to uphold Packard's prestige while appealing to the growing middle class. It sounded smart on paper, but in practice, the Clipper diluted everything Packard stood for. Its design wasn't bad, just too conservative. While Cadillac, Lincoln, and Chrysler were pushing aggressive fins, lavish chrome, and revolutionary lines, the Clipper looked safe. Not bold enough to attract new buyers and not glamorous enough to keep old customers. Technically, the Clipper had a powerful V8 engine, a solid chassis, and features like power seats, but the driving feel and interior were just average. It didn't scream Packard. It whispered, conventional luxury. The biggest mistake was market positioning. A cheaper luxury car sounds appealing, but in reality, wealthy buyers didn't see it as luxurious enough, and value-conscious buyers opted for a Ford or Chevy with a lower price and a fresher look. The Clipper fell into no man's land, a car nobody truly wanted. The result was poor sales and a damaged brand image. Within a few years, Packard merged with Studebaker, and by 1958, the name was gone. The Clipper, though not a terrible car on its own, became an unwitting traitor to the brand's legacy, hammering the final nail in Packard's coffin. 1956. Studebaker Golden Hawk. You might be surprised to see this car on our list. The 1956 Studebaker Golden Hawk was actually one of the most important models Studebaker released that year. It came equipped with a powerful 352 cubic inch Packard 5.8 engine, producing up to 275 horsepower. Buyers could choose between a 3-speed manual or automatic transmission. Inside, it featured a distinctive engine-turned dashboard design and offered more options than the earlier Studebaker Speedster. While many consider the Golden Hawk an impressive car, it's also often listed among the worst cars of its era. The main reason: Studebaker Packard was struggling to compete with giants like GM, Ford, and Chrysler. That pressure impacted everything from how the Golden Hawk was built to how it was marketed. On top of that, the car cost more than its competitors, which likely turned off potential buyers. To cut costs, Studebaker removed some standard features found in the Speedster, like turn signals, which became optional. Many saw this as a cost-cutting move that hurt overall quality. The styling of the Hawk series from 1956 to 1961 also sparked mixed reactions, with some calling it clunky or overstyled compared to the sleek original Louis Coupe design. In the end, a mix of high pricing, reduced features, divisive design, and intense competition led to the Golden Hawk's commercial disappointment, making it a cautionary tale from the mid-1950s auto industry. 1955. Dodge La Femme. Next on our list is the 1955 Dodge La Femme, a large car specifically designed for women by Dodge. It had the same engine and transmission as other standard cars, including a powerful V8 engine with about 185 horsepower. Furthermore, the La Femme had unique colors: sapphire white and heather rose. The interior and accessories were also color-coordinated to appeal to female buyers. It included extra accessories like a matching handbag, raincoat, and rain hat, along with other fashion accessories that women typically liked. However, the design of this car focused more on cosmetic or beauty items rather than delivering high style and performance as expected. Sadly, it didn't succeed because it was designed based on outdated ideas about women, instead of focusing on what women actually wanted and needed in a car. Instead of ensuring the car performed well and was easy to use, they focused on adding fancy accessories that weren't practically important. Everyone who saw or drove the La Femme agreed it wasn't worth buying. People thought it was just a marketing gimmick, not something useful for a female driver. 1956. DeSoto Adventurer. With a name like Adventurer, DeSoto wanted to sell this car to thrill seekers, speed enthusiasts, people craving something bold and new. And to be fair, it looked the part. Sweeping curves, glistening chrome, and prominent two-tone paint made the car visually stunning. Sadly, the speed was only skin deep. The rest couldn't keep up. Advertised as a high-performance coupe to compete with Corvette and Thunderbird, the Adventurer boasted a powerful Hemi V8 engine with over 300 horsepower, impressive on paper. But behind the wheel, it was a different story. Soft suspension, weak brakes, and a heavy chassis made handling feel floaty and completely unsporty. Buyers expecting a real muscle coupe got a car that looked fast but drove like a family sedan. This disconnect between advertising and reality was fatal in the booming performance car market of the 1950s. The Adventurer failed to deliver where it mattered most and quickly faded away. What do you think about this list? Which car surprised or amused you the most? Share your thoughts and memories in the comments below. 1958. Buick Limited. Buick used to be the symbol of accessible American luxury, but this 1958 Limited felt like a tone-deaf attempt to outdo everyone and failed. At over 19 feet long and weighing nearly 5,000 pounds, it was more yacht than automobile, especially at a time when city streets and parking were much tighter than today. Under the hood was a 364 cubic inch V8 engine. Sounds powerful, right? But the fuel economy was ridiculously poor, often only getting a few miles per gallon. And while the interior was luxurious, with leather seats and full power accessories, it still wasn't enough to make it a car you'd actually want to drive daily. The real problem wasn't just the size, it was the design philosophy. Add more chrome, add more bulk, add more flash. But the result was a cumbersome, expensive car that couldn't keep up with more balanced competitors. Buick only sold about 7,400 units before killing the model off in 1959. The Limited became a classic example of what happens when style overwhelms substance. 1957, Lincoln Premier. If you wanted to turn heads in 1957, the Lincoln Premier was your car. With flamboyant styling, chrome everywhere, and a colossal presence, it proudly declared, "I am the pinnacle of American luxury." The problem was, it was so over the top, it became overwhelming. Stretching almost 19 feet long and weighing over 5,000 pounds, navigating it through tight city streets was a nightmare. The front was bulky, the rear high, and visibility poor, making driving it feel like commanding a ship. Even with a powerful V8 engine, the car was sluggish and consumed fuel horribly, even by the 1950s standards. The interior was truly luxurious, with thick upholstered seats, premium materials, and plenty of power amenities. But behind the sparkle was a lack of innovation. While competitors like Cadillac were introducing advanced technology, Lincoln seemed stuck in place. With a high price tag, oversized chassis, and poor real-world performance, the Premier couldn't compete. Today, it's remembered as a relic of an era when American automakers chose big, bold, and flashy over refinement and efficiency. 1958, Lincoln Continental Mark III. Some cars make you feel like royalty behind the wheel, but the Mark III, it made you feel like you were commanding a battleship. Nearly 20 feet long and weighing over 5,000 pounds, the 1958 Lincoln Continental Mark III was the definition of excess in both form and function. Lincoln aimed to challenge Cadillac with a top-tier luxury model. They loaded it with impressive features for the time. 6. Way power seats, power trunk, power windows. On paper, it was advanced, but in reality, everything was either too heavy, too flimsy, or both. The boxy design, stunted tailfins, and tank-like front end made the Mark III look more like a fortress than a luxury car. And when it came to driving, its massive 430 cubic inch V8 engine couldn't overcome the weight or the shockingly poor fuel economy. Priced at nearly $6,000 at the time, the Mark III competed directly with the Cadillac Eldorado, but lacked the finesse to win that battle. Today, the Mark III isn't remembered for its success, but for representing an era when automakers believed bigger automatically meant better, and they were wrong. 1955, Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz. In the golden age of American flash, Cadillac was the ultimate symbol of wealth and style. And the Eldorado Biarritz? It was the jewel in the crown. Priced at over $6,200 new, nearly $70,000 today. This was a car built not for driving fun, but for making an entrance. At first glance, the 1955 Eldorado Biarritz is a masterpiece. Soaring tail fins, gleaming chrome, stylish two-door convertible shape. But look closer, and the cracks begin to show. Despite a 331 cubic inch V8 engine with 270 horsepower, the car was too heavy to be nimble. The wide body and low ground clearance made city driving a chore. The biggest issue? You paid for the looks, but you didn't get real innovation. No groundbreaking technology, no superior performance, just flash. And that flash came at a price. The gold trim, leather seats, and custom parts made maintenance expensive and replacement parts rare. The Cadillac Eldorado Biarritz was certainly a status symbol, but it also represented the idea of buying luxury for the image, not the substance. A visually impressive car, yes, but ultimately a lavish toy built for showing off, not for real-world use. 1959, Cadillac Eldorado Brougham. In America in 1959, the cost of a house could also buy you a Cadillac Eldorado Brougham. With a starting price of over $13,000 back then, nearly $135,000 today, it was one of the most expensive American cars ever produced. So what made it so costly? The answer: sheer opulence. Interiors upholstered in leather, wool, polished stainless steel, and even a steel roof with bright chrome trim. It came with almost ridiculous amenities: a custom perfume atomizer, stainless steel cocktail cups, and memory seats. Each Brougham was hand-assembled, giving it a Rolls-Royce aura in an American shell. But beneath that lavish exterior were countless engineering headaches. The air suspension system was cutting-edge, but notoriously unreliable. The fancy electrical features were super cool, but extremely difficult to maintain. And the car's weight was so great that even the powerful V8 engine struggled to move it with confidence. City driving felt awkward, oversized, and cumbersome. Cadillac only produced 99 Eldorado Broughams that year. While it remains a rare collector's item, it never achieved mass success because it embodied a flawed idea. Too much luxury isn't always what buyers actually want. This car was a luxury disaster. A reminder that when you obsess over flash and forget function, you risk losing everything that makes a car valuable. Thank you for watching. 1957 Ford Skyliner, retractable. Imagine driving a car that could transform from a coupe to a convertible with the flick of a switch. In the 1950s, that sounded like science fiction, but Ford made it a reality with the Skyliner retractable, the world's first mass-produced car with a fully automatic folding hardtop. However, behind the spectacular show was a network of headaches. The Skyliner's roof system was an engineering marvel. 7 electric motors, 6 locking mechanisms, 4 lift jacks, and nearly 600 feet of wiring. When it worked, it was mesmerizing. But when just one motor failed, the whole system stopped. Worse, the folded roof took up almost the entire trunk. Planning a long trip? Good luck fitting luggage. Add the extra weight from all the components, making the car heavier, less fuel efficient, and worse handling than regular Ford versions. Priced at nearly $3,000 at the time, over $33,000 today, buyers had to ask themselves, is that roof ballet worth all these trade-offs? The Ford Skyliner retractable is a perfect example that impressive engineering doesn't always equal market success. It's a cautionary tale. When engineers overcomplicate, drivers pay the price. 1958 Edsel. Speaking of automotive failures, we can't skip the Edsel. Ford believed the Edsel would be their ace in the hole, a mid-range premium brand to fill the gap between Ford and Mercury. But instead of becoming a resounding success, the Edsel became one of the biggest failures in American automotive history. What went wrong? Ford placed immense expectations on the Edsel. But when the Edsels, like the Pacer or Ranger, arrived at dealerships, customers were stunned for all the wrong reasons. Its bizarre horse collar grille was widely mocked as awkward and ugly. Critics called it a toilet seat or an Oldsmobile sucking a lemon. Furthermore, the massive advertising didn't match the real-world experience. Priced around $2,900 at the time, over $30,000 today, the Edsel was advertised as a mid-range luxury car, but poor build quality, a fragile teletouch transmission, and frequent electrical issues quickly eroded confidence. Launched during an economic recession, the idea of splurging on an unreliable car didn't sit well with American buyers. Sales plummeted. Dealerships stopped supporting it, and within a few short years, the name Edsel vanished. Ford spent over $250 million on this project, but it completely backfired. The Edsel became a punchline, a $250 million disaster, and a public embarrassment for Ford. The Edsel stands as a clear lesson. No amount of marketing can save a flawed product. It was a dream that collapsed under the weight of overconfidence and a failure to truly understand the customer. 1953. Kaiser Frazer Henry J. Divided by Corsair. Henry J. may sound like the name of a friendly neighbor, but in reality, it was an ambitious and ultimately failed attempt by a small independent automaker to survive against Detroit's Big Three. Kaiser Frazer built the Henry J to be truly cheap, compact, minimalist, and inexpensive to produce. Their strategy was simple. If we remove enough features, we can sell a brand new car for almost the price of a used one. A bold strategy. But they forgot a crucial fact. Customers don't just want cheap, they want value. The Henry J lacked almost everything. No external trunk lid, you had to fold down the rear seat to access your luggage. No glove box, no armrests, no passenger sun visor. Some early models didn't even have roll-down windows, just a fixed pane of glass. By 1953, Kaiser launched the Corsair trim level, trying to make the Henry J feel more upscale by adding bright chrome, nicer upholstery, and a glossy dashboard. But a nicer exterior couldn't hide the truth. The chassis still felt short and awkward, and the proportions looked strange. Under the hood, the modest 4- or 6-cylinder engine delivered great gas mileage, but zero driving excitement. The Henry J didn't feel like a car. It felt like an appliance for transportation. The fatal mistake was the pricing. While affordable, it wasn't cheap enough. It ended up only slightly below Ford and Chevrolet, which offered far better styling and more equipment for just a bit more money. As a result, the Henry J landed in no man's land. Not cheap enough to attract bargain hunters. Not good enough to compete with mainstream cars. By 1955, barely 2 years later, both the Henry J and the entire Kaiser Frazer brand disappeared from the American market. 1951. Crossley Hotshot. It looks like a toy, but the 1951 Crossley Hotshot was once hailed as America's first true post-war sports car. It was born from the idea of Powell Crossley Jr., a business genius known for affordable radios and refrigerators. His logic was simple. If I can bring home appliances to every home, why not a sports car? The idea sounded promising, a small, affordable, fun-to-drive roadster for everyone. But in reality, the Hotshot became a classic example of how romantic ideas often clash with harsh engineering reality. Less than 10 feet long, weighing only 1,100 pounds, and it had no doors to get in. You had to climb over the sides. No roof, no real windshield, no heating system. This was a car built for the brave. Under the hood was a tiny 724 cubic centimeter 4-cylinder engine, producing just 26.5 horsepower. Thanks to its light weight, the Hotshot could still reach speeds of around 70 miles per hour. On winding roads, it offered an exhilarating driving feel, but on the highway, it was terrifying. Build quality was another weakness. The steel body was prone to rust, and many Hotshots fell apart within just a few years, with no side windows, no trunk, and no amenities whatsoever. Owning one required real sacrifice. Still, Crossley was bold. They dared to be different. The Hotshot even pulled off a surprising win in the 1950 Sebring 6-hour race, an incredible feat for a car with lawnmower equivalent power. 1958. Sir Vival Prototype. And finally, at number 1. We have something truly unique and never before seen. The 1958 Sir Vival. This wasn't a mass-produced car, but a hand-built safety prototype created by engineer Walter C. Jerome. He was concerned that Detroit's lack of attention to safety had led to too many unnecessary deaths and injuries. After about 10 years working on the chassis of a 1948 Hudson, he created this car. The most unique feature is undoubtedly its 2-part articulated design. The engine and front wheels were separate from the main passenger compartment. This was intended to enhance protection in a collision. The front section would absorb most of the impact force in a head-on collision, and the bending of the articulated body would reduce side impact force. Another unique feature was the driver's raised, turret-like cockpit. Placed centrally and offering nearly 360 degrees visibility thanks to the cylindrical glass. However, this car was never produced due to financial issues. The estimated cost was $10,000, while a 1958 Cadillac Series 62 cost about half that. Some of its safety ideas, like seat belts, padded dashboards, reinforced bumpers, and side marker lights, were mandated by the federal government a decade later. Although it was a prototype, the Sir Vival still exists today. However, it seems quite difficult to drive. The front wheels don't turn. The entire front section is controlled by the articulation. Turning the entire front section to steer is certainly heavy. Handling and safety at high speeds are questionable, especially on wet roads. It's even doubted whether it's safe to drive above 40 miles per hour. The build quality is also quite rough. The Sir Vival is an extremely strange and unique example of silly but well-intentioned efforts in the 1950s. 20 best 1960s muscle cars. What if we told you the wildest, fastest, and most iconic muscle cars of the 1960s weren't always the ones you see in magazines? From street-legal race machines to factory-built beasts that pushed the limits, we're counting down the cars that left tire marks on history, and maybe your driveway too. Buckle up because this ride is unforgettable. 1963. Plymouth Max Wedge. If you were hanging around garages or racetracks in the early 1960s, you probably remember when Chrysler decided to zig while everyone else zagged. While General Motors was still cranking out big, full-size cruisers, Chrysler made a bold move in 1962. They went smaller. Not on power though, just on size. They scrapped their original full-size plans at the last minute, squeezing Virgil Exner's bold styling onto a more compact frame. The result? Some called it cartoonish. And yeah, it looked a bit awkward. But what those cars looked like didn't matter for long, because Chrysler was about to pack some serious heat under the hood. With Elwood Ingalls stepping in to clean up the design, Chrysler's engineers, led by the legendary Tom Hoover, got busy under the hood. The result was the Max Wedge. First came the 413 cubic inch beast in 1962. In a Plymouth, it was called the Superstock 413. In a Dodge, the Ramcharger 413. No matter the badge, they were flat out fast. But 1963 was when things really got wild. The Max Wedge engine grew to 426 cubic inches, 425 horsepower, paired with the industry's first 3-speed automatic. Drop that into a lightweight body car, and you had a street-legal rocket. These machines weren't just quick, they were nearly untouchable at the track. Only about 250 of these Plymouth Max Wedge cars rolled off the line in 1963, making them unicorns today. 1966 Chrysler Street Hemi. By 1966, Chrysler was done playing nice. They were ready to bring their racing monster, the 426 Hemi, out of the shadows and onto America's streets. Up until then, the Hemi was strictly a track-only terror. But all that changed thanks to a firm push from NASCAR. See, in 1964, Richard Petty dominated NASCAR in a Plymouth, powered by a race Hemi. The engine was so good, so untouchable, that NASCAR banned it the very next season. Their message was clear. If you want to race it, you'd better sell it to the public. So Chrysler did just that. In 1966, anyone with the cash and the courage could walk into a Dodge or Plymouth dealership and order a brand new intermediate with a 426 cubic inch Hemi under the hood. This wasn't just a tuned-up V8. This was a fire-breathing, dual-quad monster, making 425 horsepower. Of course, that kind of race-bred engine needed serious work to handle everyday life. So Chrysler's engineers went back to the lab, refining it for street use. They made it durable, reliable, even in rain, snow, or high altitudes. And what's incredible, even as engine tech evolved through the late 1960s, the street Hemi hardly changed. It didn't need to, it was already a legend. For many old-school gearheads, hearing that Hemi rumble for the first time was unforgettable. 1962. Pontiac Catalina and Grand Prix Super Duty 421. Back in 1962, nobody was using the term muscle car just yet. But if you were around back then, you probably remember the roar of full-sized beasts like the Ford Galaxy, Chevy Impala, or the Chrysler 300 tearing up drag strips and speedways. And Pontiac? Oh, Pontiac was right in the thick of it, holding its own and then some. Before the racing ban came down from the American Manufacturers Association in 1963, Pontiac was on fire. Their secret weapon? A thunderous lineup of Super Duty engines that didn't just turn heads, they made headlines. The 421 cubic inch Super Duty V8 was the crown jewel, rated at 405 horsepower. It wasn't just big, it was brutally fast. And after March of 1962, they tweaked it further with bigger valves and a freer flowing intake. That meant even more power and even more trouble for the competition. Pontiac didn't stop at raw power. They got smart. They took their big Catalina and Grand Prix models and stripped them down. Aluminum hood, fenders, even bumpers. Lighter bodies meant quicker launches, and suddenly these land yachts were moving like rockets. Fewer than 200 of those Super Duty Pontiacs were ever made, but they sent a clear message. The muscle car era wasn't just coming, it had already begun. And Pontiac? They were leading the charge. 1969. Ford Mustang Boss. 429. Now, we all know the Ford Mustang helped kick off the whole pony car craze. But if we're being honest, The 1969 Boss 429 wasn't just a pony, it was a thoroughbred bred for war. The Boss 429 wasn't really built for Main Street, it was built for the NASCAR circuit. Ford needed a way to sneak its fire-breathing 429 cubic inch Hemi engine into competition. And to do that, they had to sell it to the public first. So what did they do? They dropped it into the Mustang. But here's the thing. Fitting that massive 429 into the Mustang's tight engine bay? Not so simple. That's where CarCraft came in. Ford shipped unfinished Mustangs to CarCraft's facility in Brighton, Michigan. They widened the shock towers, reworked the front suspension, and basically rebuilt the front end just to make room for that monster motor. On paper, the Boss 429 was rated at 375 horsepower, but everyone in the know understood that was just politics. With a few tweaks, a better tune, free-flowing exhaust, proper gearing, this thing became a rocket. Sure, the Cobra Jet 428 Mustang might have been quicker off the lot, but the Boss 9 had serious long-haul power, built for speed, built for battle. Ford only made 859 Boss, 429 seconds in 1969, and 499 more in 1970. If you saw one back then, you remembered it. Wide stance, giant scoop, that unmistakable Boss 9 badge, and under the hood, the heart of a NASCAR champion. 1968, AMC, AMX. If you were around during the late 60s, you probably remember American Motors, the company that made cars for the sensible, everyday American. Their motto was, "The car for the human race," and they stuck to it. While the big three were chasing the youth market with loud engines and flash, AMC was making practical cars for practical folks. But here's the twist. AMC had actually helped start the muscle car movement without even meaning to. Years earlier, they led the charge towards smaller, more efficient cars, and in doing so, they opened the door for powerful engines in compact bodies, the very formula that defined the muscle car era. Ironically, they hesitated to walk through that door themselves. By 1968, they knew it was time to catch up. And catch up they did, with style. Out came designer Dick Teague's sleek Javelin, and alongside it, the showstopper, the AMC AMX. It was a two-seat muscle coupe, sharp, aggressive, and priced to win hearts. With a 390 cubic inch V8 putting out serious horsepower and a curb weight just over 3,000 pounds, this little beast could move fast. It had Corvette performance at Mustang prices, and it still clung to AMC's proud tradition of value. The AMX wasn't just fast, it was smart. It spoke to the baby boomer crowd that wanted excitement but didn't have a Corvette-ized wallet. 1969. Dodge Charger Daytona. By the late 1960s, everything was in place for the ultimate horsepower showdown. Baby boomers were coming of age, gas was cheap, the space race was in full swing, and racing, whether it was drag strips or NASCAR, was everywhere. And Dodge decided to go big, real big. Enter the 1969 Dodge Charger Daytona. To win in NASCAR, Dodge had to play by the rules specifically, the rule that said you had to sell it to the public to race it on Sunday. So Dodge built exactly 503 of the wildest muscle cars the world had ever seen. This wasn't just another fast car. This was something else entirely. For starters, the Charger Daytona looked like it came from outer space. It had a long, pointed nose cone designed in a wind tunnel and a towering rear wing that looked like it belonged on a rocket ship. People didn't know whether to stare or salute it, but under that wild body was Chrysler's legendary 426 Hemi, a 425 horsepower monster that already had NASCAR officials sweating bullets. Dodge had taken the game, bent the rules, and played to win. NASCAR didn't know what hit them. The Daytona wasn't just fast, it was unbeatable on the super speedways. Dodge had called NASCAR's bluff, sold just enough to satisfy the rule book, and changed racing history in the process. It was Detroit saying, "We can build anything, and we can make it fly." 1964. Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt. By 1963, the race to dominate the drag strip in NASCAR was in full swing, and most of the big players were still leaning on full-size cars. For Ford, that meant the massive Galaxy 500. It had muscle, no doubt, especially with the new 427 cubic inch FE big block under the hood, but it was heavy, and heavy doesn't win races. So Ford made a bold move in 1964. They took their midsize Fairlane, a car that debuted just 2 years earlier, and turned it into a fire-breathing monster. The result was the Ford Fairlane Thunderbolt. Just the name alone sounded fast, and it lived up to it. Under the hood, the same 427 cubic inch engine, tuned to crank out 425 horsepower at 6,000 revolutions per minute. But the magic wasn't just in the power, it was in the weight. Ford swapped out steel for fiberglass on the hood, fenders, doors, and even the bumpers. Real glass? Gone, replaced by plexiglass in the side and rear windows. Ford only built 100 Thunderbolts in total, 49 with 4-speed manuals and 51 with automatics. They weren't built for the street. These machines were born for the strip. In fact, they dominated, winning the 1964 NHRA Superstock Championship. NASCAR might have banned them, but in drag racing, the Thunderbolt struck hard. And when Chrysler's Hemi got the boot from NASCAR in 1965, Ford finally had its moment in the stock car Sunday. 1970. Chevrolet Chevelle SS 454 LS 6. Built on GM's midsize A-body platform, the Chevrolet Malibu and its performance sibling, the Chevelle SS, helped fuel the muscle car revolution like few others. And by 1970, Chevy didn't just keep up with the horsepower wars, they detonated a bombshell. That year, something special happened. If you checked off the right boxes and whispered the magic code, RPO Z15, you got access to the 454 cubic inch big block. This monster engine came in 2 flavors, the LS5 with a stout 360 horsepower and the LS6, a solid lifter brute with 450 horses and 11-to-1 compression. That wasn't just a lot of power. It was the most horsepower ever offered in a production car at the time. Only 4,475 LS6-powered Chevelle SS 454 seconds were built that year. But here's where it gets tricky. Before 1969, Supersports had their own model designation. You could spot them by the VIN. After that, the SS became just a trim line of the Malibu. So, unless you've got original dealer paperwork, a window sticker, or a build sheet tucked under the seat springs, it's tough to prove you're looking at a real SS. And that mystery? That makes the genuine ones even more valuable today. Do you think muscle cars peaked in the 1960s, or did another decade do it better? 1969. Chevrolet Camaro Z28. Now, if we're talking muscle cars, bigger often meant better. But the 1969 Chevy Camaro Z28 proved that sometimes it's not the size of the engine, it's how you use it. This little street brawler came equipped with a 302 cubic inch V8. Small, sure, compared to some of the heavy hitters of the day, but it packed a punch. 350 horsepower worth. And thanks to its racing pedigree from the SCCA's Trans Am series, that engine was high-revving, responsive, and built for precision. Lightweight, agile, and properly tuned, the Z28 could hold its own with the big boys. A limited slip differential and beefed-up suspension gave it excellent grip off the line, and it wasn't afraid of the curves either. It ran the quarter mile in just 13.8 seconds, right alongside some much bigger, beefier machines. 1969 Chevrolet Camaro ZL1. The 1969 Camaro ZL1 was a different animal altogether. It looked like a regular Camaro SS to the casual eye, but under the hood, it packed a weapon straight from the racetrack. The ZL1 was powered by an all-aluminum 427 cubic inch V8, a motor originally designed for the brutal Can-Am racing series. On paper, it was rated at 430 horsepower and 450 pound-feet of torque, but those numbers were just for show. In reality, this engine made much more than that. And thanks to its aluminum construction, it didn't even weigh more than a typical small-block V8. That meant better weight distribution, quicker launches, and sharper handling. Chevy didn't stop there. The ZL1 came with stickier tires, a heavy-duty suspension, and a limited-slip rear end, everything you needed to make the most of that raw power on the strip. It clocked a blazing 13.2 seconds in the quarter mile. Back in 1969, that was supercar territory. Only 69 ZL1 Camaros were ever built. They were expensive, rare, and built purely for performance. But for those who knew what they were getting, the ZL1 wasn't just another Camaro. It was a rocket in disguise. A street-legal track car that could embarrass just about anything that lined up next to it. 1968. Shelby Mustang GT 500KR. Let's kick things off with one of the rarest and most revered Mustangs ever built. The 1968 Shelby GT 500KR. Just 1,570. One of these legendary machines rolled off the line that year. And if you were lucky enough to see one in person back then, you knew you were looking at something special. KR stood for King of the Road. And that wasn't just a catchy name. It was a declaration. Under the hood, this Shelby packed a 428 cubic inch Super Cobra Jet 5.8, officially rated at 335 horsepower and 440 pound-feet of torque. Insiders knew those numbers were sandbagged to keep insurance agents from panicking this car had real bite. But the GT 500KR wasn't just about straight-line power. Shelby made sure it could handle the road too, with staggered rear shocks to cut down on wheel hop and added suspension bracing for better stability. The GT 500KR was built to launch hard and stay planted. It could rip through the quarter mile in 13.9 seconds, a mighty fine number for the time. Sure, it might only place 10th in our ranking, but in terms of style, pedigree, and street presence, the 1968 GT 500KR was royalty. Thank you for watching. 1965. Pontiac GTO Tri-Power. 1964. Now, that was the year the muscle car era truly kicked into gear. Pontiac pulled a fast one on General Motors by slipping a beast of an engine into their midsize Le Mans. They called it the GTO, technically just a trim package at first, but what a package it was. At the time, GM had a corporate rule limiting midsize cars to engines no larger than 330 cubic inches. Pontiac didn't just bend that rule. They flat out broke it by dropping in a 389 cubic inch V8. It was a gamble that could have ended careers, but it didn't. Instead, it launched a legend. By 1965, the GTO wasn't just a sleeper hit, it was a cultural icon. That year brought refinement, better brakes, heavy-duty shocks, a stiffer anti-sway bar. The base 389 engine now cranked out 335 horsepower, but the real magic was in the Tri-Power version. 3 two-barrel carbs working together to unleash 360 horsepower. It sounded like thunder when you stomped the gas. Sales more than doubled in 1965, with over 75,000 units flying off dealer lots. Pontiac had hit a nerve with American drivers who wanted speed, style, and soul. Were you lucky enough to race or drive any of these beasts when they were brand new? Share your story. 1969. Dodge Charger R, divided by T Hemi. The 1969 Dodge Charger R, divided by T, wasn't just a muscle car, it was a rolling legend. With its long, aggressive lines and unmistakable Coke bottle curves, the Charger already had presence. But when you added the mighty 426 Hemi under the hood, now you were talking serious trouble on the street. This wasn't just any engine, it was the Hemi, a 425 horsepower masterpiece pushing out a jaw, dropping 490 pound-feet of torque. You didn't just drive a Charger R divided by T with a Hemi, you commanded it. And the sound of that motor turning over? It was thunder on 4 wheels. Dodge didn't stop with brute force. They made sure the car could handle the punishment, a beefed-up suspension, a heavy-duty Dana 60 rear axle, and a limited-slip differential meant this Charger wasn't just about straight-line blasts. It was a true drag strip dominator. The numbers don't lie. With all that power and a chassis built to handle it, the 1969 Hemi Charger R, divided by T, could blast through the quarter mile in just 13.5 seconds. Back then, that made it one of the fastest muscle cars on the road. And even today, it's a car that commands respect. 1969 Pontiac GTO Judge Ram Air 4. Loud, proud, and built to turn heads, it wasn't just another muscle car. It was Pontiac's muscle car crown jewel. And when it came to raw power, nothing beat the top dog version, the Judge with the Ram Air 4 400 cubic inch V8. This wasn't just a big engine. It was a torque-hungry beast, cranking out 370 horsepower and a ground-pounding 445 pound-feet of torque. Pontiac gave it a high-performance 3-speed hydromatic transmission, which made launching off the line smoother and more focused, perfect for anyone who wanted to leave their competition in the rearview mirror. To keep that power planted, the GTO Judge came with a safe T-track rear differential, because all that muscle doesn't mean much if you're spinning your wheels. And if you were hoping to stay cool behind the wheel, forget it. That massive Ram Air 4 motor filled the engine bay to the brim, leaving no room for air conditioning. So yeah, you got heat, but it wasn't from the sun, it was from all that horsepower rumbling under the hood. 1969. Plymouth Barracuda 440. If you were lucky enough to be around in 1969, you knew that the Plymouth Barracuda had gone from quirky compact to full-blown street menace. And when they dropped a 440 cubic inch V8 into that little body, well, all bets were off. Only 358 of these monsters were ever made. That's right, just 358. And get this, the engines weren't even installed by Plymouth themselves. They handed the job to the experts at Hearst, the same folks who knew a thing or two about getting power to pavement. The result? One of the most brutal Plymouths of the era. That 440 big block made a roaring 375 horsepower, and when you mashed the pedal, it could tear through the quarter mile in just 13.8 seconds. Back then, that was lightning fast, especially for a car that didn't look like it belonged at the drag strip. 1969, Chevrolet Camaro Copo 427. When you talk about muscle cars from the 1960s, the conversation isn't complete without the Camaro. And when it comes to Camaros, there's one that sits at the top of the mountain. The 1969 Copo Camaro. Now, Copo stood for Central Office Production Order. Sounds dull, right? But here's where it gets fun. Normally, Copo was used for special order fleet cars, think police packages or taxi setups. But a few clever dealers saw an opportunity. What if they used the Copo system to sneak Chevrolet's most powerful engines into their lightest car? And that's exactly what they did. The result? A Camaro with a 427 cubic inch V8 under the hood, the same engine you'd usually find in a Corvette or a full-size Chevy. At the time, Chevy had an internal rule. No engines over 400 cubic inches in cars as small as the Camaro. But the Copo loophole let them break that rule without breaking a sweat. In 1969, two versions of the Copo Camaro hit the streets. The more common Copo 9561 came with the L72 iron block 427 raw, rowdy, and built to rumble. The ultra-rare Copo 9560, that one had the ZL1 aluminum 427. Only 69 of those were ever made light, fast, and outrageously powerful. Dealers like Yenko, Fred Gibb, and Berger became legends by offering these factory supercars. And here's a little gem for you. At least one Copo Camaro in 1969 came with Chevy's Wild V 75 liquid tire chain option, a remote-controlled sprayer that squirted traction fluid on the rear tires. Yep, a burnout in a can, straight from the factory. 1969 Pontiac GTO Royal Bobcat. The 1969 Pontiac GTO was already a street legend, but Royal Pontiac wanted more. Known for turning factory muscle into fire-breathing machines, they took the GTO and gave it the Royal Bobcat treatment. First, they dropped in a larger 428 cubic inch V, 8 bigger and meaner than the factory 400. Then, they fine-tuned the suspension, front and rear, giving it sharper launches and tighter handling. Add in a 4-speed manual transmission, and you had a quarter-mile monster capable of laying down a 13.8-second pass. But here's the charm. Royal didn't strip it out for speed. The original vinyl seats and wood grain dash stayed right where they were. This was a muscle car you could race on Sunday and cruise in style on Monday. Understated on the outside, deadly under the hood, the 1969 GTO Royal Bobcat was the kind of car that made other drivers nervous at a red light. 1969 Plymouth Roadrunner, a 12 six-pack, and taking the top prize for the fastest factory muscle car of the 1960s? That honor goes to none other than the 1969 Plymouth Roadrunner A12. This was the ultimate wolf in wolf's clothing. No chrome, no frills, just brute force. The A12 package turned the already tough Roadrunner into a factory-built street brawler. The magic started under the flat black, lift-off fiberglass hood. Beneath it sat a tuned-up 440 cubic-inch V8, topped with the iconic six-pack setup. 3 hungry two-barrel carbs feeding 390 horsepower straight to the pavement. But this wasn't just about the engine. Plymouth borrowed parts straight from the 426 Hemi playbook, like its valve springs, flat-face hydraulic tappets, and a beefed-up cam. Out back, it ran a 4.10-to-1 rear axle with a limited slip diff. The suspension was stiffened. The tires were fat, 15-inch Goodyear G70S. And the attitude? Pure menace. The result? A quarter-mile time of exactly 13.0 seconds flat. No tricks, no fancy badges, just raw performance that beat every other muscle car of its era. If you had the nerve to rev that big V8 to its limits, only a few were ever made. And today, the A12 Roadrunner is one of the most sought-after and valuable muscle cars around. But back then, it was the car that showed up late to the party and left everyone else in the dust. Wow, what a memorable journey back in time, wasn't it? Every car on today's list, no matter how strange it looked, how poorly it drove, or how much it screamed excess, played a role in shaping a bold and chaotic chapter of American automotive history. If you like this video and want to join us in exploring more untold stories about the world of classic cars, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with friends who also love nostalgia. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.